Hey guys, what's good? Welcome back to JDB Select's Magic Round, done and dusted for another season, and what a great round of football that was. The Warriors got a win, and the cherry on top being the Melbourne Storm going down in dramatic fashion to the Raiders on Sunday night. Absolutely fantastic round of football. Full credit to the NRL, it's a great spectacle. I love the way they do a little bit extra with the graphics, the cameras, all the rest. It really adds and gives it that sense of occasion for us as fans to really enjoy 3 full days of football. And not only was the football great on the field, it was also great off it, with our select VIPs bagging another 9 units last week, bringing the year-to-date total to 20.88 units. You can join our free Discord server by scanning the QR code on screen now. It is completely free. You get access to our official picks, which as you can see on screen, were down 12.85 units last week. Although if Jaden Sewer hadn't been robbed by Casper the Ghost, we would be in profit. But nonetheless, we are still up 139 units week to date. That's absolutely phenomenal after just 9 weeks. So do check out our free Discord server. You've got nothing to lose. It's the best thing going. And again, it is completely free. Last week was a phenomenal result for us in the tips, bagging 7 out of 8, only missing out on those pesky Broncos against the Panthers. Super happy with 7 out of 8. I did say last week that this week would be a make or break week, and it certainly made me, as you will soon see in our tipping comp ladder. And speaking of the tipping comp, if you don't know by now, we do have a JDB Selects tipping comp. All the details to join are shown on screen. 3 great prizes, and entry is completely free. You'd be mad not to sign up. And there you have it. JDB Selects has entered the top 20. That's right, I'm coming for you guys. I should actually be 5th on that ladder, but I did forget to submit one of my tips for the Thursday night games, so I am showing 1 less than my actual result this season, which is a shame, but that isn't going to stop me from chasing down the likes of Jordan Hill, M. Lincoln, the Warrior, I Say It, etc, etc. Congratulations to you guys. Good luck with your tips this week. Here are my personal tips and predictions for round number to go. Alright, round 10 gets underway on Thursday this week with the last placed Parramatta Eels playing host to the 14th placed Dolphins at CommBank Stadium. Starting first with the Eels, who fell short in a spirited contest against the Cronulla Sharks, going down 28 points to 18 in the opening match of Magic Round. Despite a determined second half surge, the Eels were unable to overturn Cronulla's early advantage, with the Sharks running in 5 tries to Parramatta's 3. Mitchell Moses, Dylan Brown and Dylan Walker worked hard to spark the Eels' attack, which did look much improved, but were ultimately outdone by 10 errors and 33 missed tackles, allowing the Sharks to capitalise at crucial moments. The Eels were also on the wrong end of a couple of really poor calls and misses from the officials, but ultimately were outplayed for most of that game, with their forward pack unable to match the intensity and go forward of the Sharks. The result leaves the Eels marooned on just 2 wins through their opening 2 months of football, but they are finally starting to show signs of life. And in terms of teams list for Parramatta, both Brendan Hands and Jake Tungle are listed to be available for selection this week. And as for the Dolphins, their undefeated run at Magic Round came to an end as they fell 36 points to 26 to the Sydney Roosters in a high-octane clash. The Dolphins missed the jump, with the Roosters seizing early momentum and leading nearly 20-0 after 26 minutes before Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow outleapt James Tedesco to score, followed by a penalty goal that kept them within striking distance at 14-8 at the break. The second half exploded, with the Roosters surging ahead with 3 tries in 8 minutes, stretching their lead to 32 points to 8, with the Dolphins yet again slow out of the blocks and unable to handle the Roosters' power game through the middle of the park. Tabuai-Fidow sparked a brief comeback with his second try, leading to a couple more from Herbie Farnworth and Cody Nikarima, but ultimately Redcliffe's poor starts to both halves proved to be the difference. Now, in terms of teams list for the Finns this week, Felice Kaufusi, Kurt Donahue and Daniel Saifiti are all expected to return to the fold this week, while poor old Max Plath is expected to miss at least 4 weeks following surgery to his foot. Looking at the two sides head to head, it's 1 win apiece in their previous 2 meetings, with both sides actually winning by exactly 28 points in both games. Man, as always, these Thursday games tend to be absolute coin flips, but for me, I am going to lean on the side of the Dolphins, but only just and with very little confidence. The Dolphins have shown plenty of attacking promise this season and have a tendency to switch in and out of games, but I do think if the Dolphins can switch on and perform for the full 80, they should be far too strong for the Eels, who obviously are boosted by the return of Moses, but that doesn't fix your weak middles and your questionable edge defense. So for me, I think the Finns can cause a slight upset, but just by 1 to 12 points. Moving now to the first of two games on Friday, and we start first with the 12th placed Newcastle Knights taking on the 16th placed Gold Coast Titans at McDonald Jones Stadium. And if we start first with the Knights, who delivered a commanding performance against the South Sydney Rabbitohs to snap a 5-game losing streak 30 points to 4. Newcastle burst out of the gates with 3 tries in the opening 13 minutes, setting the tone for what was a much improved attacking display after scoring just 36 points in their previous 5 matches, and provided a much needed confidence boost. Fletcher Sharp was the star of the afternoon, who was celebrating his 21st birthday with a hat-trick, scoring in the 7th, 11th and 62nd minutes. Bradman Best also continued the onslaught after halftime, finishing off an 85-metre sweeping movement to push the lead to 24-0. Their defence hasn't been a problem all season and was once again on point, keeping South Sydney scoreless until the 67th minute and only conceding the lone try. Could this finally be the game that kick-starts Newcastle's season? Now, in terms of injuries for the Knights, there were no new injuries, and I don't believe they have any players returning this week, so I would expect to see the same 1-17. And as for the Titans, their struggles continued against the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, ultimately falling short 18 points to 38. The Titans were hampered by early injuries, notably losing Tom Weaver to a concussion just 3 minutes into the match, which forced a reshuffle in their halves, with Chris Randall stepping up alongside AJ Brimson. The Gold Coast showed some grit under difficult circumstances, but were ultimately outmatched by the ladder-leading Bulldogs, seeing just 44% of possession and struggling to fire on attack, having the lone line break to the Dogs' 7. Tino Fasua-Malaawi was once again their best on ground, clocking up 171 run meters, but unfortunately he cannot win games on his own. The Titans hope to have key playmakers back soon to strengthen their spine as they continue to battle injury woes that have hampered their entire squad. And speaking of the injury woes, Tom Weaver was deemed a Category 1 HIA, so will require a sit-out at least for another week. Kieran Foran, though, is expected to make his first appearance of the season this week from a bicep injury. Jaden Campbell, though, isn't expected back until at least round 11. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Knights, they have won 5 of the last 7 meetings. The Knights, they have also never lost to the Titans at McDonald Jones Stadium, winning all 6 games. And because of that, I do like the Newcastle Knights here by 1 to 12 points. I think defensively the Knights are so much stronger than the Titans, and if they can recapture some of that spark that they had against the Rabbitohs early, they should be able to pile on plenty of points and defend their own line. So for me, the Knights continue their unbeaten streak by 1 to 12 points. Alright, and the final game on Friday night has the 13th placed South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the 5th placed Brisbane Broncos at Accor Stadium. Starting first with the Rabbitohs, who endured a difficult afternoon, falling 30 points to 4 to the Newcastle Knights in a one-sided. Souths were hampered by an ongoing injury crisis and were forced into several positional changes just before kickoff, struggling to build any momentum or threaten the Knights' line throughout the first half, entering the break scoreless. South Sydney's woes deepened when fullback Jai Gray was forced from the field with a hamstring injury, compounding an already depleted squad. Their sole highlight came in the 66th minute when Isaiah Tass crossed in the corner after a well-constructed kick by Campbell Graham. The defeat now leaves the Rabbitohs languishing near the bottom of the ladder, with their season at a crossroads as they search for answers amongst mounting adversity. And in terms of teams list for the Rabbitohs, Latrell Mitchell is free to play this week, having served his 1-game suspension. Peter Mamazelis picked up a dislocated elbow in the final minutes of that game and will be out of action for a while. Jamie Humphries is the only player eyeing a return and looking to overcome a hamstring injury that has kept him out since round 5. And as for the Broncos, they suffered a heavy 32-8 point defeat against the Penrith Panthers at Suncorp. Despite an early strong start from the Broncos, who scored the opening try through Ben Hunt, the Panthers weathered the storm and quickly responded. Adam Reynolds was near perfect off the boot last week, but had a night to forget, being completely outgunned and outclassed by Nathan Cleary. Their edge defence was unable to stem the flow of Penrith points, and while Payne Haas produced yet another Herculean effort, Brisbane were out-enthused across the park, something that has been their Achilles heel for the past few seasons. Nathan Cleary recreating his grand final winning try was so poetic, and the final straw, completely rattling an already wounded Broncos side that has now lost 8 of their last 7 games against the Panthers. And in terms of teams list for Brisbane, Ezra Mam is free to play this week after serving his 10-week suspension, and I think Michael Maguire has no choice but to include him in the side this week and potentially move Ben Hunt to hooker. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Brisbane Broncos, they have won 4 of the last 6 meetings between the two clubs. The Rabbitohs, though, they have won 4 of the last 5 games at a core. But I am going to take the Broncos for a big bounce back here. I think the Rabbitohs have too many injuries, the Broncos have too much class, and if they can turn it on like they did against the Bulldogs or a few other teams earlier in the season, like the Roosters, etc. So for me, Brisbane, 13+. Alright, moving now to the first of 3 games on your Super Saturday, starting with a top of the table showdown with the second placed Canberra Raiders playing host to the first placed Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs at GIO Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Raiders, who delivered a thrilling and dramatic performance against the Melbourne Storm to cap off Magic Round, clinching a controversial 20-18 point golden point victory. The Storm started strong and dominated early possession and field position. However, the Raiders fought back fiercely, with Tamale and Matsumoku scoring quick tries, narrowing the gap to 14-12 at half-time. The second half was a tense arm wrestle and came to a crescendo when Ryan Pappenhausen's 75th minute field goal for Melbourne was disallowed after a bunker review penalised Storm's Trent Liero for a high tackle on Joe Tarpany. The reversal kept Canberra's hopes alive, and shortly after, fullback Kyle Weeks produced a spectacular individual try, chipping over Pappenhausen and regathering to score, levelling the game at 18-all and sending it into golden point. Raiders captain Jamal Fogarty secured the win with a penalty goal in the 85th minute after Liero was once again penalised for foul play, sealing a hard-fought victory and what was, in my opinion, the best game of the season to this point. This win marked Canberra's 5th consecutive victory and once again showed their incredible resilience, which has spearheaded their 2025 campaign. Now, no new injuries for Ricky Stewart and his men, so I would expect the same 1-17 this week. And as for the Bulldogs, they bounced back from their first loss of the season with a commanding performance against the Gold Coast Titans, securing a 38-18 point victory. The Bulldogs started strong with Jacob Kiraz opening the scoring in the 4th minute, but were unable to pull away from the injury-depleted Titans by half-time, only ahead 14 points to 8. The second half saw the Bulldogs dominate, scoring 3 tries within 10 minutes to push the lead to 32 points to 8. Kiraz completed his hat-trick while Preston also crossed the line, with all tries converted by Stephen Crichton, who was flawless with the boot, going 7 for 7 on goals. It wasn't the Dogs' most clinical performance of the season, but given the circumstances, it was exactly what they needed following a poor showing against the Broncos, and they'll only be better for it as their suspended players begin to return. And speaking of those players, Matt Burton will return to the side this week following his 1-game suspension. However, Josh Curran isn't allowed back until round 12. Alright, looking at the two sides head to head, the Raiders, they have won 9 of the last 10 games against the Dogs. Canberra are also riding a 5-game winning streak at home against Canterbury, dating back to 2016. And because of that, and because of the way they've played all season, I do like the Raiders at home in this one by 1 to 12 points. I think it's a cracking game. I think the Bulldogs showed a little bit of fatigue last week, letting the Titans put 20 on them, or almost put 20 on them. And the Raiders, their defense held so strong all game against the Storm. I think they can get it done in front of their home fans and steal that number 1 spot. So for me, Canberra, just. Alright, moving now to the second game on Saturday, with the 10th placed St. George Illawarra Dragons taking on the 3rd placed NZ Warriors at WIN Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Dragons, who fell short in a high-octane clash against the West Tigers, losing 34 points to 28. The Dragons started strongly with Dylan Egan and Valentine Holmes crossing early, but found themselves trailing 26-10 at halftime after a momentum-shifting play on the stroke of the break. Jaden Silva lost possession over the line in what is easily the worst bomb try I have ever seen, and Tigers fullback Doreen Buller raced 100 metres to score, a try that stunned the crowd and proved pivotal. Jacob Little sparked a second half revival with 2 tries in quick succession, and Havis Stewart's late effort brought the Dragons within striking distance, but the Tigers' early lead proved to be insurmountable. I thought King Tongia brought, so much more to the Saints' attack, which resulted in their second highest score of the season, but there's no joy in a performance full of attacking promise if you're going to concede relatively soft tries at the end of the field. And now, in terms of teams list for the Dragons, Emre Gula suffered a dislocated shoulder, so will be unavailable this week. And as for the Warriors, they showcased incredible resilience to edge out the North Queensland Cowboys 30 points to 26 in a thrilling Magic Round encounter. In trying conditions and in front of a vocal contingent of travelling fans, the Warriors surged to a 30-12 lead early in the second half, powered by a first half masterclass from halfback Luke Metcalf, who scored 2 tries with 5 goals and ran for a game-high 164 metres. Metcalf's combination with Chanel Harris-Tavita, who also contributed 2 try assists and a try of his own, set the tone for the Warriors, who crossed for 5 tries before halftime, including a momentum-shifting 80-metre intercept from Adam Pompey on the stroke of the break. Injuries in the second half allowed the Cowboys to storm back with 3 tries in 7 minutes, slashing the deficit to just 4 points, but Tonga's very own Luke Metcalf produced a desperate try-saving tackle on Murray Taulagi in the corner to preserve the Warriors' slim lead, easily more important than any of his attacking plays. The War's ability to withstand the Cowboys' late surge despite fatigue and a depleted backline underline their growing maturity as a side, and the win marks their 6th victory in 7 games, propelling them to 3rd on the ladder and equaling their best ever start to a season, last achieved in 2018. Now, in terms of teams list, for the Wars, Rockaberry picked up a hamstring injury and will be unlikely to play this week. Ed Kosi also picked up a shoulder injury, which could leave the Warriors very thin in the outside backs department, although Dalen Watene-Zelezniak could make his return this week, which would be a massive inclusion. James Fisher-Harris is also eyeing a return either this week or next from his pectoral injury. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Dragons have won 4 of the last 6 meetings. They also have an incredible record against the Warriors at WIN Stadium, winning 11 of the 13 games between the two clubs played there. But you'll be goddamn wrong if you think I'm tipping the Dragons against the Warriors. Wise all day, 13 plus, enough said. Alright, and the final game of Super Saturday has the 9th placed North Queensland Cowboys taking on the 15th placed Penrith Panthers at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Cowboys, who delivered a spirited second half surge but ultimately fell short in a thrilling 30-point to 26 defeat at the hands of the Warriors. Entering the contest on a 4-game winning streak, the Cowboys found themselves trailing 30 points to 12 midway through the second half after a clinical opening 40 minutes from the Warriors. However, the Cowboys refused to go away quietly, launching a ferocious comeback with 3 tries in just 7 minutes to narrow the margin to 4 points with 15 minutes to play. Jeremiah Nanai pushed his case for an Origin recall, as did Tom Dearden, who once again pulled all the offensive strings to orchestrate the second half revival. It was a cracking game, with the Cowboys demonstrating both their attacking threat, but also once again highlighting the need for greater defensive consistency against top-tier opposition. Now, the Cowboys, they didn't pick up any new injuries, so I would expect the same 17 this week. And as for the Panthers, they lifted themselves off the bottom of the NRL ladder with a commanding performance against the Brisbane Broncos, 32 points to 8. The match showcased the Panthers' return to their scintillating best, with Nathan Cleary spearheading the effort through a try assist, a 40-20, and a perfect 6 goals from 6 attempts. His try just before halftime was reminiscent of his iconic 2023 Grand Final winning moment and absolutely crushed the Broncos' spirit. Cleary's strategic kicking and leadership were pivotal throughout, keeping the Broncos under pressure and pinned in their own end and orchestrating their attack with ease. And even Tom Jenkins picked up a try double, who is clearly, loving life, with Casey McLean finally sitting down on the pine and actually getting some ball on that wing. I've been backing the Panthers all season, and of course the week we abandon ship they turn it on, but the real question does now become, what can we expect from them this week? Now, in terms of teams list for the Panthers, huge news if both Brian To'o and Mitch Kenny return to the fold, as they are expected to be available for selection this week. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Panthers have won 4 of the last 6 games against the Cowboys. However, North Queensland beat the Panthers earlier this season and have won 2 of the last 3 games at home. Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a toughie. But I am going to take the Penrith Panthers, who have broken my heart more times than I can count this season. But I do think that they can really start to build off that performance. They're a better side without McLean in it. And, with Cleary, Yo, To'o, Kenny, I think they could get past the Cowboy side, who does love a bit of a bed shit. So, for me, Penrith 1-12. Alright, moving now to the first of 2 games on your Sunday this week. Starting first with the 4th placed Melbourne Storm, taking on the 18th placed West Tigers at Amy Park. Good lord, good luck, Benji. Alright, starting first with the Storm, who suffered a dramatic 20-18 golden point loss to the Raiders to cap off Magic Round. The Storm started strongly, with Grant Anderson scoring the opening try and Ryan Pappenhausen contributing 2 penalty goals and a conversion to give Melbourne a 14-0 lead early in the first half. Suafa'alongo's electric pace was on display, setting up key plays including a spectacular try for Ryan Pappenhausen. The second half saw a tense battle with both teams trading sets before Fa'alongo extended the Storm's lead with a try early in the second half, but Canberra's defence remained steadfast. The game's intensity escalated with sin-bin penalties for both and culminated with Ryan Pappenhausen's 75th minute field goal being scrubbed out for foul play by Trentley Arrow, who also gave away the game-defining penalty in Golden Point to hand Canberra the win. The Storm are really lacking off the bench and tend to fall out of games once their starting rotation comes off, something I think Bellamy will need to address. Seriously though, how good is it to watch the Storm lose? And in terms of teams list for Melbourne, both Will Warbrick and Harry Grant are expected to return to the side this week. And as for the Tigers, they secured a thrilling 34 to 28 point victory over the St. George Illawarra Dragons to move into the top 8 on the ladder. The Tigers established a commanding 26 to 10 lead by halftime, highlighted by a remarkable try from Jareem Buller, who capitalised on a ridiculous error by Dragons forward Jaden Sewer, scooping up a loose ball over the line and sprinting 100 metres to score the try just before the break. Charlie Staines was also a standout for the Tigers, crossing the line twice in his first NRL match of the season, while Sania Taruva and Samuel Afanu also contributed tries. Despite the Dragons' second half surge, the Tigers held on in a nail-biting finish, showcasing their improved resilience and teamwork on defence. These are the kind of games the old Tigers would have lost, and it really does just show how far they've come. And in terms of teams list for Wests, Brent Naden and Stafford Toa are in doubt this week with injury. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, Melbourne, they have won 10 of the last 12 games against the Tigers, and we all know the Storm don't lose back-to-back games, let alone at home against the Tigers, where they will celebrate Paps and Ali Katoa's 100th. Pretty straightforward one for me here, guys. Melbourne, 40 plus. Alright, and the final game of round to go has the 7th place Manly Sea Eagles taking on the 6th place Cronulla Sharks at 4 Pines Park. Starting first with the Sea Eagles, who will be fresh off their first bye of the season, but the week prior snapped a 3-game losing streak with a 26 to 10 point victory over the Penrith Panthers. Manly dominated the early exchanges, enjoying 58% of possession and capitalising on back-to-back penalties to open the scoring through Ruben Garrick in the 5th minute, before Tommy Talau finished a slick right-edge move orchestrated by Tommy Turbo, who returned to the side for his first game since round 4. Daly Cherry Evans had been a passenger for the past few weeks, but finally sprung back into life, combining with Homoli Olakuatu to seal the result late and spearheading Manly's right edge attack. Manly have continued to produce hot and cold performances, but with Tommy Turbo back in the side, I think we're all expecting a bit more consistency. And in terms of teams list for Manly, Jake Trbojevic should be free to return this week after missing time with concussion. Josh Aloiai is also expected to be available for selection, while Jason Saab and Jordan Chankam Tong's return are currently unknown. And as for the Sharks, they kicked off Magic Round with a 28 to 18 point victory over the Eels, holding off a spirited second half comeback. It was a gritty contest early with Cronulla's defence looking solid and aided by the Eels' ill discipline. Points were scarce in that first half outside of some moments of brilliance from Nico Hines, Brenton Nikora and KL Aero. The second half saw the Sharks extend their lead through Sam Stonestreet, but Jesse Calhoun being sent to the sin bin opened the door for a Parramatta comeback, which saw them score 2 quick tries to narrow the deficit to just 4 points with 17 to play. A pivotal moment came when Ronaldo Mulitalo nearly scored a spectacular try, only to lose possession just before grounding, with the bunker however awarding Cronulla a crucial penalty for interference by Bailey Simonson, which swung momentum back to the Sharks. The result now keeps Cronulla firmly in the top 8 and nearly ends a tough stretch of 6 away games in a row. Now in terms of teams list for Cronulla, Siosifa Talakai was on the field for only 2 minutes before his night was over with a Category 1 HIA, which means he won't feature this week either, and Teague Wilton isn't due back from his shoulder injury for at least another week. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, Cronulla, they have won 5 of the last 7 games. That includes a 24 to 18 point win just 3 weeks ago in Perth. The Sharks have also won the last 3 meetings at Brookie, but before that the Sea Eagles had won 9 of their last 10 at the ground. And for me, I do like Manly here coming off the back of the bye. I think the Sharks have been on the road for 6 weeks now. They're starting to get fatigued. They will be without a few middles, and I do think DCE, Turbo and the likes can really do a number on them. So for me, I'm going to take the Sea Eagles to get their revenge, 13 plus, in front of a packed out Brookie Oval on a Sunday afternoon. Bang, just like that, we're done for yet another week, 10 weeks down. Pretty crazy how fast it does go. Thank you as always for watching. If you are still here and new here, hit that subscribe button, leave a like on the video, drop your tips and predictions in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.